History Network, host the African History Network show. It is Sunday, December 17th, 2023, and we are live. I wanted to come on for a few minutes and talk about this topic that I wanted to discuss back on December 7th, but did not get a chance to talk about. And this deals with the Vicksburg Massacre in Vicksburg, Mississippi, that took place December 7th, 1874. December 7th, 1874. You've heard me talk about this before. And an African-American sheriff by the name of Peter Crosby was forced out of office, as well as many other African-Americans who held political office there in the county. And they were forced out of office by a paramilitary white domestic terrorist group called the White League, which was founded in March 1st, 1874, the White League. So all this takes place during the Reconstruction Era, which is 1865 to 1877. And this is the period of time right after the Civil War ends in 1865 and chattel slavery ends December 6, 1865, when Georgia ratifies the 13th Amendment. Okay, so I've talked about the Vicksburg Massacre before, and I'm not just a talk show host, I'm also a historian, political commentator, and lecturer, and I will be teaching another session of my online class, Black Resistance Movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. So I'll be teaching that today as well as soon as I finish this broadcast. So if you haven't registered for that online course, you can register for that right now. And we have the information in the thread of the broadcast, as well as at our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. So when we look at the Vicksburg Massacre, okay, Zen Education Project has some good information on the Vicksburg Massacre. And on December 7th, 1874, during the Reconstruction Era, the Vicksburg Massacre occurred in Mississippi, with estimates ranging from 75 to 300 African Americans were killed. Estimates range between 75 to 300 African Americans who were killed. You're going to have white people attack African American citizens who had organized to defend Peter Crosby, who was an African American sheriff there in that county in Vicksburg. He was a formerly enslaved man and a veteran of the Union Army. Peter Crosby had been forced to resign from his duly elected role as sheriff. Okay, now the Zen Education Project cites an excerpt from the book "A Nation Under Our Feet," "A Nation Under Our Feet," by Black Political Struggles in the Rural South from Slavery to the Great Migration, by historian Stephen Hahn. Okay, and here's a picture of the book, "A Nation Under Our Feet, Black Political Struggles in the Rural South, Slavery to the Great Migration." Okay, now, when we look at this excerpt from this book, it says, most important was the emergence of the White League and of the White Line movement more generally in Louisiana and Mississippi. Okay, so as I stated, the White League was founded March 1st, 1874. Okay, and you're also going to have a movement called the White Line movement, which dealt with the white racial line when it came to politics, the white racial line when it came to politics. So this is during a period of time when African Americans are acquiring land, we're making large advances, we are holding political office, getting elected to political office. You have African American men who are voting because of the 15th Amendment of 1870. Okay, and you have growing resentment from white people, especially in the South, towards these advancements that African Americans are making. Okay. And then in 1873, you're going to have what's known as the Panic of 1873, where you have an economic collapse, economic depression here in the U.S., and that's going to heighten racial tensions. Okay. And we see this throughout history when you have heightened racial when you have economic depressions, when you have economic strife, this heightens racial tensions. And we see this here with what was originally called the Great Depression and later called the Long Depression after the 1929 stock market crash, which causes what we normally term as the Great Depression. So if we look at this, we go back to this article here from the Zen Education Project. Most important was the emergence of the White League and of the White Line movement more generally in Louisiana and Mississippi. Committed to drawing the racial line in politics and inviting all white men without regard to former political affiliations to unite. Okay. Inviting all white men without regard to former political affiliation to unite. The White League was first organized in Opelousas, Louisiana in late April 1874, and then spread rapidly. Okay. And the Opelousas in 1868 is where you have the Opelousas Massacre of 1868, which was around voting rights and African Americans trying to vote also. So it was dealing with politics. Now, it clearly built on foundations. The White League clearly built on foundations established by the Ku Klux Klan and the Knights of the White Chamilia. The Knights of the White Chamilia, Chamilia is also another domestic terrorist organization, white supremacist organization, similar to the Ku Klux Klan, but not as well known as the Klan. It built clearly on foundations established by the Klan and the Knights of the White Chamilia. A Union Army commander regarded the White League as a, quote, second edition of the White Chamilia campaign of 1868, but was even more directly aligned with the Democratic Party at that time. Now, the Democratic Party at this time is before the party realignment that begins in 1928 with the election of Herbert Hoover, who's the Republican candidate, and the Republicans implement a Southern strategy and appeal to white Southern segregationists in 5 former Confederate states to get them to vote for Herbert Hoover as president. And Republicans start pushing African Americans out of the Republican Party, and they're starting to ignore issues and concerns pertaining to African Americans. So then we're going to start slowly going over to the Democratic Party, because even though we were skeptical of the Democratic Party, but when Franklin Roosevelt becomes elected in the 1932 presidential election, we see the Democratic Party is more receptive to our issues. So we start slowly going over to the Democratic Party. The party realignment is going to complete in 1968 when Richard Nixon wins the 1968 presidential election, and he runs on the platform of law and order. He runs on the Southern strategy as well. He's the Republican candidate, and he's running against the Democratic candidate, which was Hubert Humphrey. Okay, Hubert Humphrey. And Hubert Humphrey loses. We know President Lyndon Baines Johnson does not run for another term, who was the outgoing president. Okay, so this is before the party realignment takes place. Okay, now, indeed, leagues were often little more than local Democratic clubs converted into paramilitary companies. Quote, if the Democratic Party is arrayed against the Negro and the Republicans, end quote, the Opelousas Courier proclaimed, quote, it becomes a white league. It becomes a white league, and no one can object to its efficient organization, end quote. Now, white leaguers surely recognized that the federal government was losing interest in interfering in Southern politics and sustaining Republican regimes by military means. But they also responded to the growing assertiveness of African Americans within the Republican Party, which showed itself in the rising incidence of Black office holding. So we have an increasing number of African Americans who are voting and getting elected to public office. During the Reconstruction Era, 1865 to 1877, you have about 2,000 African American men who get elected to public office. Now, there is, as we get deeper into Reconstruction, there is a declining desire from the federal government, okay, and President Ulysses S. Grant is president at this time. There is a declining commitment from the federal government to continue to get involved in racial conflicts and race massacres, racial issues, etc., in the South. All right. The panic of 1873, this depression of 1873, when you have the collapse of banks, and you have the collapse of 89 railroad companies out of 364 railroad companies. You have the collapse of the J. Cook and Company Bank. It starts with the collapse of the J. Cook and Company Bank, which invests a lot of money into building the railroad tracks, and they're overextended. So the 1874 midterm elections, Democrats take back control of the House of Representatives for the first time prior to the Civil War taking place. And you have this economic depression that lasts from about 1873 to 1879, okay? When you had the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, which was passed by Congress, and it was designed to crack down on domestic terrorism, especially in the South, and Ku Klux Klan activities who were attacking elected officials, attacking African-American elected officials, killing them, and attacking white Republicans. As time goes on, and also President Grant declares martial law in 9 counties in South Carolina in October of 1871, utilizing the Ku Klux Klan Act. And this allowed for the newly formed Department of Justice, which was created in 1870 by act of Congress. This allows the Department of Justice to federally prosecute these domestic terrorists. Okay, and this is what happens. SmithsonianMag.com has a good article dealing with this, and we do a lot of this history in my classes, and we go through this history chronologically. Created 150 years ago, the Justice Department's first mission was to protect Black rights. Created 150 years ago, the Justice Department's first mission was to protect Black rights. In the wake of the Civil War, the government's new force sought to enshrine equality under the law. Now, this is an excellent article from July 1st, 2020, by Brian Green for SmithsonianMag.com, which is the official magazine of the Smithsonian Institute. And they're cracking down on Ku Klux Klan activity, and they're prosecuting hundreds of Klansmen, okay? And Ulysses S. Grant in October of 1871, I should say, is going to declare martial law in 9 counties in South Carolina, and these Klansmen are going to be prosecuted, okay? So, but when the Clinton, Mississippi massacre of 1875 takes place, Ulysses S. Grant implements his policy of non-interference, and there's less support to keep the federal government engaged in these conflicts in the South. There's a declining amount of support, and there's a declining amount of public support as well. Okay, now White leaguers surely recognized that the federal government was losing interest in interfering in Southern politics and Southern Republican regimes by military means, but they also responded to the growing assertiveness of African Americans within the Republican Party, which showed itself in the rising incidence of Black office holding. By that time, too, white line counterparts in Vicksburg, Mississippi, had demonstrated how paramilitary mobilization and very definite intimidation could bring electoral success, even where Black voters held decided numerical sway. So the White League was heavily engaged in political violence against African Americans to suppress the African American vote. If anything still held back a full-scale white paramilitary offensive, it was removed in the November 1874 elections. Okay, the November 1874 elections. Congressional Democrats won control of the House of Representatives for the first time since Southern slaveholders had rebelled against the national government. So this is during what was originally termed as the Great Depression. This is taking place during that period of time because of the Panic of 1873. And at the same time, people are saying, well, you keep intervening and spending taxpayer dollars to deal with these Black people in the South. Okay. By 1876, when you have the presidential election in 1876 between the Republican Rutherford B. Hayes and the Democrat Samuel J. Tilden, the unemployment rate had ballooned to 14%. Okay, so all this is taking place at this time, and the progress of African Americans gets caught up in this. And this political violence, this economic depression, this unwillingness of the federal government to keep intervening on behalf of African Americans in conflicts in the South, this was going to lead to the end of Reconstruction in 1877 with the Compromise of 1877. So congressional Democrats won control of the House of Representatives for the first time since Southern slaveholders had rebelled against the national government. Okay, going back to the beginning of the Civil War, April 12, 1861. Now, in Vicksburg, Mississippi, white liners seemed to commemorate the event, the November midterm elections and Democrats taking back control of the House of Representatives. White liners seemed to commemorate the event by moving quickly to complete the work they had begun in the summer of 1874. This time, they focused on the county rather than the municipal government. Okay, they focused on county government as opposed to city government, which was on in county government there in Mississippi was almost in the Vicksburg, Mississippi area was almost wholly dominated by African American Republicans, including the sheriff Peter Crosby, who was a native Mississippian who had served in the Union Army during the war. Now, meeting in early December 1874, the white line demanded, or the White League, I should say, the White League demanded the resignations of all of the African American officials and pressured Sheriff Peter Crosby to yield under what he regarded as a threat of assassination. It should say threat as opposed to threat, a threat of assassination. Now, Peter Crosby then headed to the state capitol for help. And he was seeking help from the governor at the time, Adelbert Ames. Here's a picture of Governor Ames. Now, Republican Governor Adelbert Ames of the Republican Party's radical faction turned a sympathetic ear to Peter Crosby and the plight of African Americans. He ordered the, quote, riotous and disorderly persons, end quote, who had expelled from office the legally elected sheriff to, quote, disperse and retire peaceably, end quote, and submit to the legally constituted authorities. Submit to the legally constituted authorities. He also instructed a Warren County militia company to cooperate with Peter Crosby's effort to regain office and suppress the mob, and suggested that Sheriff Peter Crosby should summon a posse for further assistance. Now, Governor Adelbert Ames' orders did little to change the behavior or temper of the white people there in Vicksburg, Mississippi. But Sheriff Peter Crosby's call for a posse revealed a strong foundation of loyalty and organizational readiness among African Americans in the surrounding countryside. And you're going to have a lot of these African American men who are going to be part of this posse, who are former Civil War former Civil War veterans as well. You're going to have that also. Okay. Now, with dispatch, owing to the churches, political clubs, and other institutions of Black community life, a major mobilization took place. So you have all these African-American organizations who are organizing this posse to help Peter Crosby regain his office, but also help other African-Americans who were forced to resign as well. Churches, political clubs, and other institutions of Black life. As several hundred African Americans marched in 3 columns towards Vicksburg, Mississippi, even Peter Crosby feared the consequences and tried to turn some of them back. It was too late. It was too late. White people opened fire, and despite some brief standoffs, the African Americans were forced to flee. For another 10 days, some of the young white participants joined by reinforcements from across the river in Louisiana, stayed on the warpath. Now, when the smoke cleared, at least 29 African Americans had been killed, and a great many more had been wounded and terrorized. The seat of government remained in the hands of the white liners. And Peter Crosby briefly held as a prisoner. He was compelled to resign from office yet again. Governor Adelbert Ames called the state legislature into a special session, and together they succeeded in convincing President Ulysses S. Grant to send a company of federal troops to quell the disturbances in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and to reinstall Peter Crosby as sheriff. But Peter Crosby's days in office were numbered, and so too it appeared were those of Republicans over much of the state of Mississippi. For the several-month White Line campaign in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and Warren County amounted to a rehearsal for redemption in Mississippi. This amounted to a rehearsal for redemption in Mississippi. So President Grant is going to send in troops. Now, this is 1874, because when the Clinton, Mississippi riot of 1875 took place, Ulysses S. Grant took a hands-off approach to it. torchlight processions, paramilitary drilling, the disruption of Republican meetings, the harassment of African American workers, the intimidation and assassination of African American leaders, the driving off of local office holders, and the disabling of armed Black resistance, the disabling of armed African American resistance, all of which made their appearance in Vicksburg, Mississippi in 1874. All of these elements were to come into concerted use in 1875 in counties that previously had quote unquote safe Republican majorities. So there's a turning of the tide. There's a political turning of the tide. There's an escalation in political violence taking place, especially in the South. And there's also, once, like I said in the beginning, there was also a declining commitment from the federal government and from Republicans in the North to continue to intervene into these racial conflicts in the South. Okay. Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. Let's look at this piece here dealing with the Panic of 1873 that I talked about. So we can understand the context in which all of this is taking place. And if you haven't registered for the online history course that I teach on Sundays called Black Resistance Movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968, be sure and register for that right now. We'll post a link here. We have the information on the homepage of our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, because I'm teaching a session of that class as soon as we finish this broadcast here today. I'm running a little late. I was going to start the class at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so we're running a little behind. We have the information on the homepage of our website, and then we have the we have our bundle pack of classes where you get we extended our Black Friday bundle pack promotion. It's 76% off. You get my 2 online history classes that I teach, including Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. Okay, you get that as well as Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So you get my 2 online history classes that I teach, and each one is like 13, 14, 15 weeks. Okay, so it's about close to 30 hours each of content or more. You get that, and you get 15 of my lectures in digital download format. So the digital download bundle pack, African History Awakens the African Mind from Mental Death, you get all that on sale for $100. The 2 online courses and the 15 digital download lectures. Okay, so register for that right now. That's a limited time only. We have that right on the homepage of our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. The first class that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understand the transatlantic slave trade. So we just concluded that class a couple of weeks ago, but all the content is archived. So as soon as you register, you can watch that entire course. And then this is the current class that I'm teaching right now, Black Resistance Movements. Okay, if you just want to register for Black Resistance Movements or the other class, you just want to register for those classes by themselves, you can register right here. That's $60, but the bundle pack is $100. Okay, in today's class, Black Resistance Movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. Well, we just concluded last Sunday. We just finished dealing with World War I. 1914 to 1918. Today we deal with the Red Summer of 1919, right after World War I ends, and the 25 major race riots across the country. We'll talk about Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and we'll deal with Dr. Carter G. Woodson and the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, or Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. Dr. Carter G. Woodson co-founded that organization September 9th, 1915. And so we'll deal with the period of 1919 through up until World War II. And we'll talk about African American soldiers in World War II. And we know the U.S. gets involved in World War II in December 1941 after the attack on Pearl Harbor. But World War II actually begins September 1939 when Adolf Hitler invades Poland. Okay, that's when World War II actually begins, and the U.S. actually enters in fighting in World War II in December 1941. Okay, now let's look quickly here. I want to look at this information dealing with the Panic of 1873 that I mentioned. And the Panic of 1873 is going to also be one of the contributing factors to the fall of the collapse of Reconstruction in 1877 with the Compromise of 1877. Since the end of the Civil War in 1865, railroad construction in the United States had been booming. Now, this is a piece from Public Broadcasting System, pbs.org, called The Panic of 1873. Now, between 1866 and 1873, 35,000 miles of new railroad track were laid across the country between 1866 and 1873, okay? 35,000 miles of new railroad track were laid across the country. Railroads were the nation's largest non-agricultural employer. Banks and other industries were putting their money into railroads. They're investing in railroads, okay? And expanding, you're building these transcontinental railroads, you're building these railroads from one side of the country to the other side of the country. So when the banking firm of J. Cook and Company, a firm heavily invested in railroad construction, when this firm closed its doors and filed for bankruptcy on September 18th, 1873, a major economic panic swept the nation. A major economic panic swept the nation. And this is going to be followed by 89 of the 364 railroad companies that are going to shut down and file for bankruptcy as well. Now, J. Cook's firm had been the government's chief financier of the Union military effort during the Civil War. Okay, this is J. Cook and Company. Was a bank. This was a major bank at the time. J. Cook and Company then became a federal agent in the government financing of railroad construction. The railroad industry involved a huge amount of money and a huge amount of risk. A huge amount of money and a huge amount of risk. Building railroad tracks where land had not yet been cleared or settled required land grants and loans that only the federal government could provide. Okay, so this is very risky business at this time. The nation's transcontinental railroad had been completed in 1869. Entrepreneurs planned a second transcontinental railroad called the Northern Pacific. J. Cook and Company's firm was the financial agent in this venture and poured money into it. On September 18th, 1873, J. Cook and Company realized it had overextended itself financially and they declared bankruptcy. Mirroring the firm's collapse, many other banking firms and industries did the same thing. This collapse was disastrous for the U.S. economy. A startling 89 of the country's 364 railroad companies filed bankruptcy and go out of business. A total of 18,000 businesses failed in just 2 years. A total of 18,000 U.S. businesses failed in 2 years. And by 1876, unemployment had rose to 14%. So this is a climate that's overshadowing the President Ulysses S. Grant administration. And this is 1874. So this is 9 years after the Civil War ends. Okay. And this is during the Reconstruction era where they're trying to rebuild the South as well. And you're dealing with integrating African Americans into society. Okay, African Americans are acquiring land. You have the U.S. Freedmen's Bank. You have the U.S. Bank. You have the U.S. Bureau of Freedmen, Refugees, and Abandoned Lands that's created in 1865 to help African Americans and destitute white people. But also, the Freedmen's Bank is going to collapse in 1874. Now, the Freedmen's Bank, it was rife with mismanagement and different things like this, but it's going to collapse in 1874 also, and African Americans lose $2.9 million in deposits when the Freedmen's Bank collapses. Now, an economic cloud settled over President Ulysses S. Grant's second term, and he tried to find a solution that would drive it away. Workers and business people argued over what should be done. Now, President Grant setting a course that will become the hallmark of the Republican Party, which is dealing with big business. President Grant sided with Eastern business leaders and adopted their ideas for easing the crisis. But when President Grant left office in 1877, in Rutherford B. Hayes, the Republican, becomes president. The cloud of the Great Depression and the cloud of this economic crisis remained. Now, that same year, 1877, this Great Depression set off railroad strikes. So the remaining railroad companies that are still in existence and still operating, some of their workers are going on strike. Workers all over the country, in response to wage cuts and poor working conditions, went on strike and prevented trains from moving. Now, we know that about 20 years after this, you're going to have the 1894 Pullman workers strike, where the workers who work on George Pullman's railroad cars, they're going to go on strike. That you have this massive strike, and that strike was precipitated by the Panic of 1893, which was another depression in this country. Okay, and it's going to be a few decades after that, after you have the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porter organization founded in 1925. It's going to be after that organization is founded that the African American Pullman porters are allowed to go on strike. They didn't go on strike in 1894 because they were not allowed to join the white union. Okay, so and it's that 1894 labor strike dealing with the railroads. This is how you get the Labor Day holiday, coming from that strike, and the President Grover Cleveland sending in the Union troops to put down the strikers who are fighting in the street. Some of those workers are going to be killed, and as a way to appease that labor movement, he's going to have a celebration honoring the labor workers. Okay, and this is going to be the origins of the Labor Day holiday. Okay, now let's continue here. How's everybody doing? How you like this type of information? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like. Also, be sure to register for the online class that I'm teaching today. And if you miss it, it will be archived, so you can go back and watch it. Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. Okay, and we'll start that class in a few minutes here at our online school. So it'll be about 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today that I teach that class. Okay, now let's go ahead and wrap this up. Also, I'll be on live tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the African History Network show. Okay, we'll be on live, the African History Network show. Okay, so President Rutherford B. Hayes was forced to send federal troops to more than half a dozen states to stop these strikes, these railroad strikes, stop these railroad strikes from these railroad workers. In the end, the fighting between strikers and troops left more than 100 people dead and many more injured. Southern African Americans suffered greatly during this first Great Depression, this Great Depression of 1873 that lasted about 1879. Preoccupied with the harsh realities of farming, of falling farm prices, wage cuts, unemployment, and labor strikes, the North became less and less concerned with addressing racism in the South. This is what I was talking about. You have all this taking place, all these conditions taking place, and then and you have this economic depression, and there's less and less interest from the federal government to intervene in racial conflicts in the South to help African Americans. White supremacist organizations like the Ku Klux Klan, which was founded December 24th, 1865 in Pulaski, Tennessee, a few days after the 13th Amendment is ratified, Christmas Eve, they were founded, which had been suppressed through punitive Reconstruction legislation starting in 1868, resumed their campaign of terror against African Americans and Republicans. Violent conflicts erupted, including the 1873 Colfax Massacre in Colfax, Louisiana. By the time the Great Depression lifted in 1875, Southern whites would already be regaining power. And you're going to have that in 1878 in Louisiana, you have what's known as the panic. I mean, not the panic. The Black Exodus, the Black Exodus of 1878, when you have the Black Exodus of 1878, when you have about 6,000 African Americans migrating from the South, migrating from primarily Texas and Louisiana out west into Kansas. And the reason why they were leaving in 1878 is because the Democratic Party won the statewide elections in 1878, and they won control of all the statewide offices. So these African Americans are leaving because they know these white supremacists have taken back control of statewide government. So they're leaving, and they're looking for a better way of life out in Kansas. The irony, and we deal with the Black Exodus in my class, Black Resistance Movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, 1800, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. The irony is that these white plantation owners who many of them hated African Americans, but they needed our labor. They're going to plead with statewide elected officials in Louisiana to beg them to force us to stay. But you don't want us, and you despise us, but you want to exploit our labor. And then when we leave, you want us to come back. You can't make this stuff up. You go study the Black Exodus of 1878. They were called exodusters. All right. So hopefully you learned a lot today. I wanted to talk about the Vicksburg Massacre of 1874. And the reason why this history is so important, because this history, we see the continuation of the Civil War and the political violence that brought an end to the Reconstruction Era. We see a continuation of that today with the January 6, 2021 insurrection and the after effects of it. Okay. Now, this piece right here from time.com, and I talk about this in the class as well. This deals with how the history of the Reconstruction era is not properly being taught in schools or not being taught at all. It's an excellent article from Time magazine. A new report finds that 45 states are failing to teach students about the period that shaped race relations after the Civil War. Okay, now this came out January 12th, 2022, January 12th, 2022. And they cited Eric Foner. Eric Foner is one of the top historians when it comes to the Reconstruction era. Okay. And Eric Foner said in the aftermath of the insurrection, well, let me back up. The article starts out, it says, in the aftermath of the insurrection a year ago at the U.S. Capitol, many leading historians drew parallels between the violence that we saw on January 6, 2021, and the Reconstruction era, which is 1865 to 1877, the period of political revolution directly following the American Civil War. Historian Eric Foner said, quote, these events we saw reminded me very much of the Reconstruction era and the overthrow of Reconstruction. The Reconstruction era and the overthrow of Reconstruction, which was often accompanied or accomplished, I should say, by violent assaults on elected officials. Now, Eric Foner is a Pulitzer Prize winning historian and author of Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863 to 1877. Now, he made these statements in an interview with the New Yorker magazine published a week after the January 6, 2021 insurrection. Now, this article from Time magazine goes on to say that scholars say that studying the aftermath of the Civil War can help put into context many of the most seminal events in the United States in recent years, from the brutal murder of George Floyd, May 25th, 2020, by police in Minnesota, to the voter suppression laws enacted after Black voters, 16.9 million Black voters, played a major role in helping Joe Biden and Kamala Harris be elected president and vice president. Keep in mind that the January 6, 2021 insurrection happened the day after the special Senate election in the state of Georgia, former Confederate state, and Reverend Raphael Warnock was reelected. He was elected, Reverend Raphael Warnock, and then John Ossoff was elected as well to be the two Democratic senators from the state of Georgia, and African Americans played a major role in that. So there was a racial motivation and racial backlash. That January 6, 2021 insurrection was racial backlash to African Americans voting in the presidential election, but also that special Senate election as well. And that special Senate election gave Democrats the 50-50 majority in the Senate, because Vice President Kamala Harris had the tie-breaking vote if there was a 50-50 tie. All right. So that's how the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan passed in the U.S. Senate, because no Republicans voted for the bill. All the Democrats voted for the bill, including Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. And Vice President Kamala Harris had the tie-breaking vote. You would not have the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan if 16.9 million African Americans did not vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris if she vetoed that bill, it would not have passed the Senate and it wouldn't go to Joe Biden's desk. Okay. And she set the record. She recently set the record for the most tie-breaking votes as well, as a vice president, because the vice president presides over the U.S. Senate. Okay, now, but despite the timeliness of the era, the era in today's climate, many students in American schools will not get a full education on the Reconstruction era until they get to college. Okay, but most of them are not going to go to college. In social studies standards for 45 of 50 states and the District of Columbia, discussion of the Reconstruction era is partial or non-existent. Discussion of the Reconstruction era is partial or non-existent, according to historians who reviewed the period. It reviewed how the period is discussed in K through 12, kindergarten through 12th grade social studies standards for public schools nationwide. In a report produced by the education nonprofit Zen Education Project, the study's authors say they are concerned that American children will grow up uninformed about a critical period of history that helps explain why full racial equality remains unfulfilled today. Okay, so check out this article here from Time Magazine. A new report finds that 45 states are failing to teach students about the period that shaped race relations after the Civil War. Okay, it's an excellent piece, and we use this in the class as well. Okay, so hopefully you learned a lot today. You can also support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills. We have that information on the homepage of our website as well. So you can scroll down and we have it right there. We have the link here. Click on that link. Here's our QR code for Cash App. And we go to our Cash App account. Our Cash App tag is $ the AHN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it will say Michael. It may show my picture there. These other ones here and others like it are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. They've been stealing money from us. I'm still trying to get them shut down. And here's our link here for PayPal as well. All right, so be sure to register for this online class. Register for the bundle, also the Black Empowerment Friday weekend bundle, 76% off. You get my 2 online courses, and these are multiple week courses, and you don't have to be in class live. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. Even after the course is over with, you don't lose access. And you get 15 of my lectures in digital download format. You get all that for a bundle. It's on sale $100 right now. Okay. It's at our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. All right. We have to get out of here. Hopefully you learned a lot today. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a heart. Give us a like on this broadcast. Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. And look out for the African History Network show. Watch me on Fridays on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I just guest hosted on Friday, December 15th. So we're airing some of those clips as well of me guest hosting Roland Martin Unfiltered. Remember, right now is correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.